Okay, so yeah, my name is Vladan, and basically, yes, I'm teaching at the University of Novi Sad, that's in Serbia, but usually what I'm doing for many, many years, it's some kind of like crazy big black maps, investigations. I can maybe show some of them here. Some of them are like kind of became some kind of like almost artistic object. So this one is called Anatomy of an AI System. We did this in 2018 together with Kate Crawford, and basically explore some kind of like extended anatomy of one device. At that time, it was like Amazon Alexa device, and then we deep dived into what is like really anatomy of one, like connected device. So, but we went like not just into infrastructure, but it went more into nature, into materials, into minerals and the labor. And so this became some kind of like bird view on a materiality of artificial intelligence. And then before that, I was like doing many different investigations. So for example, this one was also one of my favorites. It was called Facebook algorithmic factory. So we tried, so this is some 2014 to 16, I think. So we tried to map this kind of algorithmic factory and how factory look like the process of like data collection to the final product. So I spent a lot of years in basically investigating those black boxes. And then, so basically how this investigation is going, like we are finding a way how to investigate technology, how to trace route networks, how to find information about the algorithms, about the processes. So we are investigating patents, investigating many different things. But then once I had the map, I make a map, I realize that I'm spending equal amount of time to understand what is the meaning of that map. So how I can read, okay, now I have this invisible territory or whatever, but what's the meaning of that? So I was then trying to, in order to give an answer to that, I needed to deep dive into critical media theory, into philosophy, into also into art, in order to give this like some kind of reading of the maps that I was doing. And so during I was doing that, I kind of like became really big fan of several different concepts and ideas. And in a way, for me, one of the most important questions were like this relation between those systems and platforms and labor. And basically, not just in the sense of this kind of invisible labor, like people who are labeling, tagging, or working in mines, but also how to define this kind of new labor relation between us and the platforms. So I started to deep dive into political theory, into philosophy, critical media theory. And then during COVID, I created this like one map that is called New Extractivism that I'm going to show today. And that one, it's completely the weirdest one. So don't be like, it's okay, everything is going to be fine. It is really condensed in a sense of like, there is so many different things like basically squeezed into this like 17 minutes or whatever. But I'm going to play one by one chapter and maybe try to explain what's going on. But basically this new extractivism map came as a because all of those other maps are kind of like a mapping of different technologies. And this one, it's mapping of ideas and concepts on how to understand the power within those technological systems. So it is a bit different than other big black maps that I'm doing, but it's still one of my favorite works. I'm not showing it often because like maybe sometimes it's too weird and too much for some people, but you are big and you will. It's going to be okay.
New Extractivism, an assemblage of concepts and allegories. The word assemblage is usually understood as a collection or gathering of things or people, a machine or object made of pieces fitted together, or a work of art made by grouping together found or unrelated objects. This map and accompanying footnotes are precisely that. One big messy assemblage of different concepts and ideas, assembled into one semi-coherent picture, or let us say a map, a worldview. 1. Gravity. Like Einstein's theory of relativity, massive objects curve the space and time of the topography of the internet, proportionally to their weight, defined by the number of their users and content. So we can think of massive monopolies and conglomerates such as Google and Facebook as enormous black holes that, with their gravity, create a field so intense that it attracts and swallows the content and users.
So basically, this is the first. So now we are going to jump from one metaphor or one allegory to another one, no? But this is one of my favorite. And basically, how to think, if we think about the internet as a space or as a territory, as a universe, no? There is like Louise Druhl. She's like a French, I think, artist. She had this idea about gravity, and this is how first time I saw this in her work. But then I was like thinking a lot about that, like if we have a space of internet, some of those big platforms, basically, they have a mass, they're huge, and then they're basically bending the time and space in the similar way of like Einstein theory of relativity. And so for me it was like, but in a way I saw this in some previous work that we did, in some investigations of metadata, for example, analyzing metadata of other people or some artists. I was always seeing this kind of big black nodes, basically, because like this is how we are using internet. We are just like constantly being drawn into those kind of big masses, big platforms. No?
2. Forces. Many other potential vectors and social forces contribute to that gravitational force. The fear of social isolation, economic and professional insecurity, unrealistic expectations of efficiency and productivity in the adapt or die environment, tailored addictions, depression and anxieties. These are just some of the other vectors that constitute social forces that keep us, with or without our wish, attached to those platforms.
So basically then I was thinking, okay, but what defines the gravity of those platforms? It's not just amount of people using it, because what Louise Druhl was like doing, she was like calculating how many people use the platform and then playing with this idea of gravity. But for me, it was not just this, it was like many other things. It's like, I mean, we are being drawn to those places because of, fear of social isolation, fear of missing out, fear of, not just fear, but also like productivity. Like if we are not using those things, we are not productive as other people. So I was trying to think how many, like about different vectors that constitute that gravity, no? And then it's interesting thing, like, okay, like if we think about, so this is like this guy floating there, it's basically drawing us down to those platforms. And then this kind of like neck level is basically defining this kind of like relation, because like the main question is like, if we, because many of those platforms are saying like it is your choice, you are not forced to use those platforms, but basically because like if you are not using it, you are paying certain price, and this price, it's either productivity or social connectivity or many different reasons why we are using it. So the price is becoming too high, this kind of invisible price, no? So that means like, yes, you don't need to use them, but in a way the price that you are paying if you are not using them, it's too high. And just certain people with a certain privilege can have a privilege of not having an email. And there was like this super, it's not a joke, it's like maybe it is, about like when they ask Hillary Clinton about when there were like this kind of big drama about leaked emails, and so they asked her, okay, but what about Bill Clinton's emails? And she said, like, but Bill doesn't have an email. So that's this kind of like, always think about who can live without, email, without LinkedIn profile. Only people who have certain privilege or certain stability in life to afford not having them. No?
The social cost of opting out has become so high that opting out is essentially a fantasy. 3. Black holes. Our imaginary hero is swimming against one of those platforms' gravitational force. As they glide towards the singularity defined by the mass of these giants, users and content pass beyond the event horizon, the imaginary boundary in time and space, beyond which there is no return to the outer part of this universe. The event horizon defines the line after which the social and economic price of leaving those platforms is becoming too high. No matter how fast they try to swim now, the stream will pull them towards the center of the black hole. Without even noticing, this story's actor is now falling towards the hole into a new allegory, the cave.
So, but just for the moment, like, I really love this metaphor of a black hole. Basically, we are using all of those metaphors here just to play with these ideas, maybe in order to give some other meaning or to try to understand this relation. But what I like is this kind of point of no return. And if you are falling into the black hole, you don't feel that moment in which you are not able anymore to go out. No? So in that sense, like, this is this point of no return, but it's also a point from which you are not able anymore to see outside of the black hole. So you're kind of like inside of this like event horizon. And but basically Felix Stalder told me like one interesting idea that basically there is another possible metaphor here. And this is this like, when you're launching the rocket, so you need certain amount of energy to go out from the atmosphere, no? And this is like in the beginning, like really, really hard. But then when you go out from there, it's getting easy. And this is basically the similar thing. This is, in a way, the energy that we need to free ourselves from this like gravity of the certain platforms. No? Yeah.
The stream will pull them towards the center of the black hole. Without even noticing, this story's actor is now falling towards the hole into a new allegory, the cave. 4. Allegory of the cave. What takes place at the bottom of this metaphorical black hole can be described through Plato's allegory of the cave. Plato describes a group of people who spend their entire life chained to cave walls looking at a blank wall. These people are watching the shadows of real objects projected on this wall, giving them names and meanings. In our story, the script and directing of this performance of shadows are entrusted to human algorithmic machines that regulate, filter, censor and moderate the projected content on the walls of the cave. The existing elements and contents that exist outside this cave and horizon of events create an information flow, a theater of shadows.
So, now we fell down into this cave, and I really like this like allegory, and because it really describes this situation. So, like in original allegory of the cave, you have like human beings being there, and they never saw anything outside of the cave. No, so they are just seeing those like projections that are happening outside, and in some variation, it's also like people outside of the cave are basically playing with some kind of like puppets and marionettes, and then making them some kind of story, no? And if you think about like our position, this is like literally what we are kind of living. So we are inside of some kind of cave, and then like majority of reality we are perceiving through those images, but not on the wall, but basically on the screen in front of us. So we don't know exactly what's going on in I don't know, Lebanon now, or Israel, or the United States, but we have a images of reality that is being projected on our wall. No? And then we will see how it goes from here. Basically, we will speak about interface, we will speak about this shadow. So I started to deconstruct this like now new situation with this cave and to try to understand what is the meaning of the shadow, what is the meaning of the projection, what are the walls, and how the walls are made of which materials and so on. So.
Walls. The cave and tower walls are constructed of multiple opaque layers and built mostly by ghost work or invisible labor. The bricks of this structure are made of black boxes, closed code and hardware, glued together with the invisible network infrastructure. They are covered with layers of corporate secrets, patents and copyrights.
So for me, it was like really, the reason why I shaped this about walls like this, it's because like when we were like doing all of those investigations before, you're constantly facing some kind of walls. You're constantly facing some kind of layers of untransparency, you know? So for example, the network, it's one, and then there is a data center, but then inside of data center, you have like algorithms. Inside of algorithms, you have, I don't know, someone made algorithms, data behind algorithms, so on, so on. So it's like constantly some kind of layers and layers and layers of untransparency. So for me, it's kind of the reason why we are not seeing this reality, why we are not seeing a matrix. It's basically, we have all of those layers of untransparency in order to understand. But it's also a really interesting question, like who is a director of the show that is being projected on the wall, no? So like, yes, we are all creating the images and creating videos and creating information or whatever that is being shown on the wall, but the one who is cutting this and ordering this is basically different kinds of algorithms and that are owned by this company that are complete. So director of the show, it's some kind of automatized machine, some kind of like a algorithmic process that is completely not transparent. But it does create this kind of like reality show, no, that is being presented in front of our eyes.
6. The interface. Interfaces are framing and structuring the projected algorithmic spectacle of images. Even though they are a direct manifestation of rules, regulations and taxonomies, they successfully obscure what is hidden beneath them. They define directly or indirectly what we can or cannot do. They are both tools and discursive frames. They are instituted as an order of discourse and embodiment of the disciplined power of the platform.
And so this is one of my favorite parts, again, a lot of favorite parts, you know. But and probably the reason why I'm also part of this group here is that is critically examining interfaces. And you will see there is like, we made exhibition on the streets here in form of posters. And basically this group of artists together, we are like completely into critically analyzing interfaces. But why for me it's important? Because like interface is basically now a window through this space. And it's super important how its interface is being framed, because interface is basically the creating the rules of the game. You know, so what we are all doing is basically like, so if we think about, I don't know, Twitter or X or how it's called, you know, like, what is the game? The game, it's this kind of two symbols. One, it's heart, another one is this like share or whatever it is. So we are all competing in collecting those hearts, no? So this is, but it's framed by the internet, so by the interface. So the interface is basically creating the rules of the game. And basically now all of us are basically participating in collecting of those like hearts or whatever it's being defined by the interface. So if it's like, if you remember when the Instagram was just square pictures, you know, like many of my students then started to create their art in form of square. That is completely not usual form, because like for thousands of years we were like mostly doing things in some kind of another format. So basically defines what we can do, what we cannot do, what are the rules of the game, what is the basically how we communicate and everything. No?
This cave is not only a prison cell, but it carries out the function of a factory hall and a resource extraction apparatus.
And this triangle is basically coming back from Anatomy of an AI, and it's still one of the questions for me. It's like how we can define this relation now. Like if we are inside of this cave and everything, like how we define, are we a resource in that game? Are we a product? Are we workers? And then you have like theories of like immaterial labor, saying like every time when we engage with those platforms, we are basically working for those platforms. But then you are in the same time being a resource that is being exploited, no? Because like everything you do, how you move or whatever, it's being recorded and extracted. So you are in the same time being a resource that is being extracted. But in the same time, you are also a product, no? Because you or your profile is what is being sold at the end in this game. Because like what Chomsky is saying about like traditional media is like, you know, for example, for the traditional magazines, the product of the magazine, it's not the magazine itself, but the public who is reading the magazine, because the main business model, it's basically advertisers paying for being in those magazines and people reading them. So the main product is a reader, not the. So this is this strange situation that is hard to define, even through these lenses, because this triangle is coming from some kind of Marxist theory or whatever, but it's hard to understand the position that we have out, because we are all the three things in the same time.
The prisoner performs their threefold function as a worker, a resource, and a product. 7. Shadows and capture agents. The spectacle of a constant flow of information projected through the interface creates a digital shadow on the opposite wall of the cave. The projected digital shadow on the wall is a resource field where thousands of capture agents, tentacles of the rhizomatic surveillance complex, extract information. Every movement or emotional reaction is being recorded continuously. These capture agents can take many forms and sizes. From the tiny pieces of code, crawlers that wander the web, over the sensors catching heartbeats and surveillance cameras capturing our faces, to the complex network of satellites orbiting Earth. They can see our shadows through a full range of the electromagnetic spectrum. They can be invisible or massive like a 500 meters wide radio telescope. The process of quantification is reaching into the human affective, cognitive and physical worlds. Every segment of our existence reflected on our digital shadows can be seen as a form of direct or indirect labor producing data as a behavioral surplus. When we breathe, walk or sleep, every single emotion that we feel, our attention, our body temperature, or diseases that we have, everything can produce a behavioral surplus if being captured by surveillance apparatus. In that sense, even our bare existence within the walls of the cave can be seen as labor.
And okay, a lot of things is happening here, but so we have a shadow, no? And this is like really poetic, okay, from my point of view, like poetic way, like I was thinking, okay, now you are being enlightened by those images, and then this light is producing the shadow, no? But the shadow is also reflect like how you move, how you react, how you your attention and everything. So basically, then this shadow on the back of the cave is becoming a resource, and now you have thousands and thousands of like different kinds of like agents of surveillance who are like collecting information from this shadow. No? But basically, it's not from the shadow, it's mostly directly from our body. And then you can think about it like, and this is here with this like screw. You know, you every year, every few months, you have this kind of new names. No? So now it's like attention economy. Now it's like emotion economy. Now it's like, I don't know, economies. But then it's always interesting to think, okay, if we think about like economy, so what is the resource in this economy? So what is the resource of attention economy? no? Attention, no? So basically, who is making attention? You. So basically, what is the resource? Resource is the time you spend. So you are the territory that is being extracted, no? What is the resource for emotion economy? Emotions. Who is producing those emotions? You are producing, again, emotions. So most of the time, those territories are basically part of your body, no? And so, but we have like a parallel situation in like, I don't know, 100 years ago, or like when we had this kind of like a rush for like a new territories, United States, cowboys and everything, no? So it was like rushing to take the territory, and it was around like resources and infrastructure, basically. All of those first American bourgeoisie is being born out of those two things, either from like mines and territory or infrastructure like trains or whatever, no? So, but now suddenly everything is being taken already, no? So this territory for capitalism, in order to expand, it needs to expand somewhere else, no? So where it's expanding now? It's expanding where the resource is, but the resource it's you, the resource it's your body, and it goes like deeper, deeper, deeper. So it's like, okay, my heartbeats, how many heartbeats you have, and then transforming this information about the heartbeats into the business model. So digging this data about your heartbeats and then transforming into some kind of app or whatever, or it can be like your breathing patterns, your sleeping patterns, your dreams, your whatever you can think of is becoming a territory. So now if it's like a attention economy, your attention, it's a territory that is being exploited, no? In that sense, like this like screw, it's entering deeper and deeper into your body, no?
Prison workers need to spend more and more hours maintaining their profiles in a similar fashion to sex workers in the windows of red light districts. Digital identity labor is the forced labor of the 21st century.
So digital identity labor, because like it's not just like we are kind of forced to constantly be engaged with this, to constantly take care about our presentation in this space, and this is like this, we are basically, because the name of the game, it's this kind of reputation economy, no? So it is us competing or decentralized, this kind of neoliberal system in such a granular pace that each of us it's basically a company. Each of us it's competing for this space, and then we are basically need to update and all the time participate basically in this reputation economy of our self brands or whatever, no?
This creates an auto-disciplinary society where each anomaly and misbehavior is detected and quantified. 8. Plutopticon. These techno-giants hold billions of users, workers, products at the bottom of those caves. In this assemblage of allegories, millions of caves or prison cells form the unique and invisible panopticon structure. The central tower of this structure has two main functions: 1, to project the content on the walls of the caves, and 2, to surveil and capture the digital shadows of the prisoners reflected on the opposite wall.
So they said, like, of course it's going to be panopticon, yes, whatever, it's hard to avoid this one, no? But what was like interesting for me there is like this kind of idea of like, okay, the original panopticon is basically you have this like middle, tower, and then everything is being seen from this position. So it's some kind of like perfect surveillance architecture. But it's interesting that this tower, it's also projecting the so we are kind of, it's not just this kind of one wall is being surveilled. Basically, on the other wall, you have a projection that is also coming from the same place. No? So in the same time, it's like watching and projecting reality in front of our eyes. I don't know, in like Foucault's or like this original Platopticon, is there a projection device or it's just like looking device? I think it's just like looking, it doesn't project.
9. Information retrieval. From each cell cave and through the core of the Panopticon Tower, streams of information are flowing into one of the central structures of this image, the data bank. The data bank is not just the engine room, but the power itself. From here, we are examining three processes crucial for this story. On one side, extracted, stored, and analyzed personal data is shaping the multidimensional portrait of the individual. On the second, all the products of the user's labor are being stored, analyzed, and ranked to form the information spectacle of images, meanings, and reputations. Furthermore, in the third one, this structure lies upon the top of the exploitation of human minds, bodies, and nature. 10. Creation of data body. Our online behavior is captured, processed, and deconstructed into statistical vectors, clusters, patterns, and anomalies. Each move we make is carefully analyzed by thousands of mathematical functions, algorithms, and machine learning systems. This system does not see us through linear narratives emerging from our browsing behavior, metadata, or movements in physical space, but as n-dimensional statistical projections. Each and every one of our clicks sharpens the resolution and complexity of this abstract and constantly changing statistical portrait or data body. 11. Individuals. These multidimensional data portraits of the individual, consisting of millions of data points in hundreds of dimensions, can be seen as what Deleuze will name individual. A physically embodied human subject that is endlessly divisible and reducible to data representations via the modern technologies of control. The critical art ensemble is describing this data body as the fascist sibling of the virtual body, a much more highly developed virtual form, and one that exists in complete service to the corporate and police state.
So this one is basically the first. So in a way, how this animation or film became, why it looks like this, because I fell in love with this aesthetics of patents, because we spend a lot of time investigating patents, and so I was always thinking like how it will look like the patent for some kind of philosophical idea or concept, and this drawing is basically the first one that I did. So it basically started from this one, and it should somehow represent this idea of individual. Is basically your representation in a data bank, because like you are an idea, it's like you are most of, even before with this kind of classical traditional like bureaucratic apparatus, from the eyes of bureaucratic apparatus, you are, you know, like being number 70 and you are being deconstructed into certain information, no? And basically when you're crossing the border, this is what is you know, from the eye of the state. But now it's like much more complicated, because like we have ourselves, our bodies, and then we have like statistical representations within those databases of us. And somehow they are like not so for example, we can think about like, I don't know, all the information about us, our movements, our clicks, our locations or whatever that is being stored with Google, with Facebook, with many others. So all of them together, they create some kind of like a distributed rhizomatic representation of our, so basically it's our digital portrait, no? And this digital data portrait, every dimension of data, every piece of data that is being added is basically creating more sharp, creating bigger definition of this like a digital counterpart that we have. But then in the same time, this counterpart that we have, and this is this line up, is basically controlling us. Again, like this database, because like based on this, what is like representation of us, it's now information for us being served in form of this kind of curated content or whatever. So it's kind of this kind of link, it's the relation between us and our representation in the data banks.
12. Condividuals. Individual is always open to interaction, always ready to be detached from and attached to other individuals that share some properties with it, creating collective agents as condividuals or supersubjects. The mountains and valleys of multidimensional, ever-changing, invisible, algorithmic landscapes are clustering individuals and creating new relations, taxonomies, and ontologies.
And then I was like, because we did like a lot of investigation of this Facebook algorithms. And then I was like, you really see how, those kind of like algorithms and processes are creating some kind of statistical spaces, in which us as individuals, as a bubbles or whatever, are kind of moving there and then being clustered in many different ways in some kind of fuzzy statistical way. And why we are co-individuals? Because we are being emerged with other people who are like, have a similar, dimensions of statistical dimensions of data and so on.
13. Surveillance assemblage. The full picture of our individual being is not centralized in one place, but is spread across hundreds of data centers in the rhizomatic assemblage of the surveillance economy and government actors. This non-heterogeneous and dispersed assemblage portrait exists through the system of data dealers, the official and unofficial exchange of data, in constant flow forming one functional entity. 14. Content extract.
So I don't have a time for all of them. I'm going to skip this one and okay. Okay, let's go here.
Action. Empowered by the digital extractivism tools of the information age, everything becomes a potential frontier for expansion and extraction. From the depth of DNA code in every single cell of the human organism, to vast frontiers of human emotions, behavior and social relations, to nature as a whole, everything becomes the territory for the new extractivism. At this moment in the 21st century, we see a new form of extractivism that is well underway, one that reaches into the furthest corners of the biosphere and the deepest layers of human cognitive and affective being.
So what is the new difference between new extractivism and old extractivism? Okay, old one, we will speak about this as well, but it is about like this kind of colonial, we take resources, we extract nature, we leave the people poor there and just move the things to our great big museum in London. So this like old one, but the new one is basically body. It's this kind of data extraction. So on the one side, we have this kind of extraction of nature, of materials, elements, and whatever. On the other side, extraction of our bodies as a form of product, the objects that are creating this data. No?
18. Enclosure and affinity to infinity. In the transition to the information age, capitalism was given a chance to satisfy its affinity for infinity, to form and conquer an infinite number of new territories, to create new mechanisms for the accumulation of capital within these new spaces, and to formulate new forms of exploitation. Once the territory is invaded, the process of enclosure and exploitation is established. New forms of extractivism are expanding into the territories far behind the biodiversity and knowledge enclosure. This is why we are not speaking anymore just about the knowledge economy, but about the attention economy, emotion economy, and many other new economies being born from the invasion of new territories of extraction. 19. Fractal supply chains. Supply chains hidden behind the engines of extractivism are black boxes as much as neural networks or algorithms hidden behind interfaces. Each triangle of this fractal represents one phase in the production process, from birth in a geological process, through life as a consumer product, and ultimately to death in an electronics dump. Within the fractal supply chain, we see a perpetual dance between human labor, non-human labor, earth labor, and automatization. 20. Blood, sweat, and toxic lakes. Every click or swipe we make online creates one little hole in the ground, filled with toxic waste and covered by toxic clouds. Every movement of materials and data within the planetary scale factory has its own hidden price. Supply chains are optimized towards maximizing profit for a few, while the real costs of the destruction that follows are shared among all the living entities on the planet in the present and the future. One molecule after another is extracted by labor and technique to make things for humans, but the waste products don't return so that the cycle can renew itself. 21. Triangular trade. Slavery was at the heart of the development of the modern planetary scale global economy. From those days, the same model of constant flow within the vast fractal production chains expanded in time, space, and complexity. The transatlantic slave trade evolved into the contemporary planetary scale factory. 22. Chains of digital colonialism. Traditional colonial practices of control over critical assets, trade routes, natural resources and exploitation of human labor are still deeply embedded in the contemporary supply chains, logistics and assembly lines of digital content, products and infrastructure. In that sense, chains of digital colonialism are made both on the extraction of digital surplus and the traditional exploitation of labor and resources. The concepts presented are mostly represented here visually, in the form of allegories. Dictionaries define allegory as a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. All of these allegories and concepts together, joined in the form of an assemblage, create together a blueprint of a machine-like superstructure, or a super-allegory. In that sense, what we have here is an almost fractal allegorical structure, an allegory, within an allegory, within an allegory.
Okay, you survived. Yay. So, yeah, this is it. Okay, now there is like some text coming, and I didn't want to speak at the end because we don't have a lot of time, so I can maybe leave some space for some questions or like reflections or something like this. Thank you. Once, like, so the reason why I'm not doing this presentation too much, it's because like once in Amsterdam on some presentation there was some kind of older guy who stood up and he told me like, this what you're doing, it's a postmodern terrorist poetry that should be forbidden because I'm poisoning the minds of young people because not giving them a hope. And that was like a really strong statement. I stay after with him and speak like, what's going on? But yeah. Okay. Okay, questions?
Yeah, I really loved your talk. I thought the concept of subopticon is one of the best things I've ever heard.
Okay.
Stay with me. One of my favorite writers, Mackenzie Work, sometimes writes about the allegory of the cave, and recently she had this meme where she turned the allegory of the cave into the allegory of the rave. People start raving, and that was kind of their way of working on their own condition. And in that light, I wanted to ask, maybe also similar to your anecdote, where is the hope in this, right? Like, how do we escape the extractivism on an individual level or collective level? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't. This is my main problem. It's like I don't. I rarely think about. I'm not able to think about future too much, and also I don't see myself being a person who understand what should be like the strategies to oppose. And I'm kind of like thinking about it, why or whatever. So it's not kind of my goal. But I think like the creation of words and creation of meanings, it's like something that can really help to, because like we are now in this moment we are not able to define a lot of things, to understand like this new relation between us and a platform. We are seeing something is going on, and this thing, it's like moderating our life. It's also like extracting something that we don't feel what it is, and it's also creating a lot of profit, and it's also creating some kind of like concentration of power and concentration of wealth into few different places. But we are not able to define to name those relations. So this is why you have like every, again, few weeks or whatever, a new kind of idea. Then Shoshana Zuboff will say it's a surveillance capitalism, but maybe it's just not about capitalism at all. Maybe it's about psyops capitalism that I don't know, Trevor Paglen is saying, okay, it's not surveillance, it's a psyops. It's creating like, like creating some kind of like a psychological operation that is like influencing our life. Or like Varoufakis will say, no, it's a feudalism. And so we don't know we don't know how to name the new relations, you know, like, and especially this kind of labor relation that I think it's like the most questionable. And this is, for example, in this, again, these posters that we made, and they're on the streets. You can see there, one of them there on the main square. So there is one of them, it's something that I did with Vuk Ćosić and Ajo Kose crew from Italy. It's basically some kind of weird dictionary of some kind of new words that doesn't exist, but also question the old words as a form of intervention, in a way like how to, I think from my point of view, strategy, it's like creation of meaning and trying to understand those relations and trying to name them and trying to question them in that sense. So that's maybe some kind of strategy. It's not like serious strategy, but like, yeah.
The creation of tactics is something that the artists and groups have developed through the years, no? From now, the international situationism, no?
Yeah.
creating different situations, no? to avoid the status quo. No?
Yeah.
I would like to ask you if you have in mind any strategy, or which are your favorite strategies that artists are using, or you are using. No?
But I love all of them. I mean, like, and this is like also a question of like, I think so the power relation, it's so unbalanced. You know, there is so much power on one side and so little power and even like capacity to understand what's going on. And this is why, for example, I don't know, now there is like on net time, like this kind of discussion about like, should, like, I don't know, some artists also like made some initiative to ban, to advocate for banning of Twitter in EU, and then like now there is a fight. No, this is not. No. But in a way, I think that all strategies are okay because like it's not just one. We should do like many different things, whatever. So someone can create new words and meanings. Someone else can go and burn a data center. Someone else can, and if all of us do everything, again, it's not enough, no? Because on the other side, you have like such a huge amount of capital and huge amount of power, and that in a way, even if all of us do everything, it will be questionable, is it going to succeed? So for me, like the strategy, it's everything. Like whether you want to burn, you want to do, but not fight between each other which strategy is better. Because this is what is happening in like most of the time in like this kind of like critical media, leftist, whatever. It's like people fight which strategy is better, and at the end you don't have any strategy happening, no? Obfuscation, it's a nice one. It's like there's whatever turns you on. Yeah.
And maybe we have time for one more question.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I really enjoyed the video, and I see a lot of the concepts and ideas and visualizations that find their work in this huge installation at the Ars Electronica.
Yeah.
Which is quite impressive. But I noticed that you work closely with another collaborator, Professor Kapoor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering about your collaboration. How do you work together?
So most of the time I was like, I'm working with others because I like it's a long process, and then it's okay to work with others. And then other people are also contributing with their own methods or their own point of view. So for example, I in the beginning I was like mostly working with like cyber forensics experts, with I don't know, legal experts, with this kind of like more, let's say, tech and more practical people. But then I realized, okay, yeah, I have those maps and I do have a problem to read them. I really need some kind of like, I think I started to work more with like social theory people, philosophers. So I work with Matteo Pasquinelli, with like many other like people that came from this kind of position of like philosophy and social sciences. And this is like, and then when we work, depends on the map really. Like, so for example, the anatomy of an AI, that I did also with Kate Crawford, was mostly like, I did my investigations, she already had her own investigations, then we joined them, and then I drew the map completely, and then based on this, we joined some kind of like, she basically shaped the essay in a way to work with the map. So it's always some kind of like a dynamic relation. So for example, for calculating empires, we really spent like 4 years inside of that document. And so she was like mostly taking care of like a textual context, like written things, and I was more into drawing things and drawing. But when you do things like this, it's like it goes together, because like, for example, if you're drawing a triangle, that triangle has some meaning, you know, and then you first need to construct the meaning of like, I don't know, relation between labor, product, and then we do these kind of things together and enjoy in creating new concepts, new words, stuff like this. But then if we need to separate labor, Kate will go more into texts, and I will go more into visual representation of concepts. But in a way, it's happening when you start to do this kind of like mapping it's a different process than writing or creating a linear story. So you're creating some kind of like you're basically working together with the map. It's not like I know everything now and I have all the data and now I just draw the map. No, it goes like step by step. You create one point and then this point leads you to another one, then connect to the third one. So it goes in parallel. And it's a really different kind of, I think it's a different kind of thinking than thinking in the terms of writing a book or things like that. Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.